I'm hot in the office.
Yes.
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 Sorry about being late. A little high on payments for my back again.
Oh, no.
Yeah, doing stupid stuff.
Do stupid stuff, Kristen.
I thought it would have been really cute to come here in my slippers, but like I said, I also forgot my briefcase. I had to go back and do that. All right, so today we're going to talk about comparative market analysis. And I like to call it comparative market art because it is not a science. It is not always easy. And it takes a lot of knowledge and a lot of perspective and a lot of hard work, all right? Sometimes it can be really simple, really easy, and take 20 minutes. Sometimes it can be really hard and take 2 days. All right, so let's talk about the things that affect value of property the most. What is key in real estate? What is king? Cash. Yeah, cash, but as far as value in real estate?
Conversation.
Hmm?
Homes.
No. Location. Location is king. Yes, please, thank you. Oh, a light on? Okay. I think it washes out the screen, but it maybe one light.
Okay.
Okay. Is that all right? Okay. See that? Like the secret's up on the screen. So location is king, all right? And as a new real estate agent, it's really difficult to understand what physical geographic barriers affect value. I'm going to talk about some of the easiest ones, all right? So we have MLS areas, right? And some of our MLS areas are strong in indicators of area, but some are not. Like a mid-city area in the MLS area is not. And I'm going to show you what I mean. I am going to go to screen share. Those of you at home, when I use the MLS, when I use the MLS, it is not always, it doesn't always share all the screens with you. I think I fixed it, but just let me know if what I'm talking about doesn't match what you're seeing. Okay, everyone at home seeing the login screen for the MLS?
Yes.
All right. So if you go to search for anything, properties, or the same way you'd search for a CMA. Particularly slow today, I guess. Really, really slow? Or not? It's like better home today, too. You go to search, and if you're comping out a single family, you would go to listing, single family. We'll do an actual search in a little while. For now, I'm just going to show you where to go. Finding MLS areas, you go to layers at the top right here, and you would select area. So this gives you all the geographic barriers of the MLS areas, and if you zoom in, it'll give you the name. So for instance, like Beverly Hills, let's talk about geographic barriers here. Obviously, properties south of Wilshire, they cost way less, right? And then between Wilshire and Santa Monica, that's probably your next geographic barrier, right? And then probably north of Sunset. I don't know why it's not letting me grab, right? So what do we call this area down here below Wilshire? No, we don't call this flats. We call it Beverly Hills south of Wilshire. How about between Wilshire and up to Santa Monica? Some of this area on the east north side we could call the flats, but not really. We would just literally call this between Santa Monica and Wilshire. This is other areas have better names. Okay, and confusing names. We'll talk about Brentwood next. Because Brentwood is very similar to Beverly Hills. Okay, and so this would be your second most expensive neighborhood in Beverly Hills. And then once you get north of Santa Monica, what area is that called? The Flats. That's the Flats. What is Triangle? The Golden Triangle is where we work here. It is literally this triangle right here. It is mostly commercial.
Not residential, right?
There's some residential in it. We call this the Golden Triangle, and I didn't know that until very recently, which I was super embarrassed about. Yeah. But you know what? I'm not a commercial agent either, so I'm gonna give myself a pass. There is some residential here, but not very much.
How do we get the names of each one of these areas?
You would need to talk to an agent who's super familiar with areas. So if you need to pull comps for an area, you need to talk to an experienced agent if you're not super familiar with the area.
Yeah, because I thought they were coming south of Wilshire was called Flats.
No. South of Wilshire is not the Flats whatsoever. It's north of Wilshire.
How we can find the agent who experience
And not even north of Wilshire, north of Santa Monica. What'd you say?
How we can find the agent who experience in particular area?
You gotta make some friends, girly. You gotta make some friends, and it can't be me because I am so busy. I will try to help you. I will help you easier if you approach me at the right time, particularly if I like you. But if you're not in my mentorship program, even then you should be going to your mentor first. And you're not on my team, I'm sorry, you are third in line already, right? After hours is always good, particularly if you offer me food or alcohol. Alcohol's always a strong motivator. Just watch it, and sometimes it doesn't work to your benefit. But I'm not the only person in this office that's an experienced agent. And I sell a few homes in Beverly Hills a year, but I'm a Beverly Hills queen, right? My business is scattered all over the place. I'd say I've done historically more business in Brentwood than anything, but I haven't done anything in Brentwood for quite some time, maybe a year and a half. All right, north of Santa Monica, but south of Sunset, and some north of Sunset, I guess, but not much, would be considered the Flats. Okay, so we're just gonna call it Santa Monica to Sunset. Are all properties considered equal in Beverly Hills Flats? Now, contrary to most stuff in Los Angeles, the east side of Beverly Hills Flats is worth considerably more than the west side. Why is that? Well, if you drive the Flats, you will find that there are not as many completely through streets between Santa Monica and Sunset on the east side of Beverly Hills Flats, where most streets do connect totally between, which means there is significantly less traffic and it is quieter. Okay?
What's it called?
Because it's flat. Yeah,
Coming from Georgia, everything.
because it's walkably flat, yeah. But also because Beverly Hills, north of Sunset, what is it? It is hills, yeah. It is hills, and it is called Beverly Hills for a reason. So what would the area, not all, but what would some of the area of the hills of Beverly Hills be called? Come on, what's the most exclusive part of Beverly Hills? Yes, Truesdale. What is exclusive about Truesdale? Well, a lot of it,
Huge houses with the lawns.
not always. Wide streets, utilities are all buried, so you don't see power lines, and you're gonna get views. Not in every property, but this is why you see those higher sales prices there, okay? Even a flats home that's $25 million, I mean, that wouldn't be considered a mega house, right? Your mega houses you see in Truesdale. And that's also because the lot sizes can get significantly larger there.
Truesdale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you get those hillside lots that can be, 50,000 square feet.
But it's not so valuable.
Hi. Really, I'm teaching class. It's okay. Did you get a golf connection? Oh. Okay. No worries. I appreciate you. I know.
Yes.
If anyone wants help from me, do you have an in to LA Country Club, Bel Air Country Club? I said LA, Bel Air. I already have an in at Brentwood. Or boy, I'll tell you. Riviera. The reason why is because I have a client who loves to go. I can sell their house. It's actually my team's client, although I think I'm in with it now. Because she wants to sell her Beverly Hills house and she wants to buy a place near wherever her favorite golf course is at one of these country clubs. Only you have to have an invitation to try out the golf course. So if you can get me an invite to LA Riviera or Bel Air, I will definitely give you some time in return, probably several times.
It means invitation for her.
Yeah.
To be in.
To golf with a member.
Okay.
All right. So while we talked about the differences in these areas in Beverly Hills, right? We're talking about location and location being king. Let's flip on over to Brentwood.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
No. So if the plot is huge, but it's completely like
Unusable,
steep, right?
yeah, it doesn't factor in, right? Only buildable land has significant value. But there is something to be said about hillside land. It means distance from neighbors, even if it's not buildable, privacy. Yeah, and privacy is also very important when it gets into these high-end areas.
And you told east side of Beverly Hills better or worse?
East side of Beverly Hills flats better than west side, which is contrary to most of our areas. The west side is generally higher value, right? Unless you're east side.
But the more desirable is flats or hills?
It depends on what you want, darling. I'm just telling you about sales prices for CMA purposes. Okay. So let's talk about Brentwood. Well, Brentwood has some pretty strong geographic barriers. Okay. It has Sepulveda and the 405 to the west. So no matter what part of Brentwood you're in, if you're right on top of the freeway and you can hear the freeway, it's going to decrease value. And that rings true for any and every property. If it is particularly close to the freeway, there are environmental factors and a lot of parents will not want to purchase because there is a link between pollutants from traffic from cars near major highways and early childhood development. Okay. So yeah, most people have an issue with freeway noise, particularly when they're buying in the price ranges that we see in these areas, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's move into Brentwood. So San Vicente Boulevard is the main shopping drag, followed by Barrington, north from San Vicente. Okay. Sunset has some minimal spots for shopping near the major streets that go through, but not much. Okay, not much at all. It is a massive parking lot at rush hours, and it is a very, very busy street that is tough to get onto and off of. Okay, this is the major cut through going into UCLA and to and from the 405 freeway. So Sunset is a massively traveled street. That being said, it doesn't seem to affect the value for those who live north of it. Okay. All right. So let's talk about Brentwood. Right. So it goes down to Wilshire. Okay. Here. And then cuts up and over right around the Brentwood Country Club. This pocket just north of Wilshire. Okay. South of San Vicente. It is heavily multifamily or condos. Okay, so it's higher density. There are some single families, and the single family section would be on the left hand side of Bundy. This is called the flats of Brentwood. Okay, this pocket right here You'll find some single family in this section as well, just not as many. And you'll find more single family on the north section here of the flats. Okay, this is also, I guess, referred to as the flats, but this is primarily condos. Parking here is shit. Between San Vicente and Sunset, this area would be the medium expense. There are a little bit of hills here. Okay. A little bit of hills here. That would be the medium expense. And then north, and over here towards the freeway. These are called the alphabet streets. And that is because they go in alphabetical or order, E, F, G, H, I. Do you see that?
Mhm.
And it is right up on the 405. You will find a lot of single family here. These are going to be the lowest price single family in Brentwood because of their proximity to the freeway. You can absolutely hear it. It's just, are you on this end of an alphabet street or this end, right? Yes.
I was gonna ask a question though, but about 3 months ago, right in that area, Brentwood and San Vicente and the Comparative there. A while mountain lions.
Yeah.
That'd be something you'd have to disclose to.
I don't know. That seems kind of freak to me.
Well, you was capital.
Yeah, it was.
A wild mountain lion.
Yeah.
I would have coyotes over there. I'm working with the dog. But
Yeah,
it's
I
fine.
mean, it depends. Like, it's not up for us to disclose, right? It's up to who to disclose. Seller. So if the seller has not experienced any of that on their property, do they have to disclose it? No, they don't. Yeah. If it has not impacted their life, their property, they do not need to disclose that.
Yeah, in fact, when it's been observed here in Beverly Hills. It's been traveling to some back there, so those.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, the hills all come down into here, right? And we disrupt the, their habitat so much. All right, north of Sunset and Brentwood becomes very, very expensive. And it leads us to our second factor in what makes property value high. If location is number one, what is number two? What do people look for?
Size.
No.
School systems?
How good are the public schools?
I just said that.
I said, yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
Yes, so location followed by schools, and you will notice Beverly Hills, Culver City, Brentwood, north of Sunset. All of these areas, very expensive. Areas in the valley that have both good school systems also. Why? Well, people want to send their kids to a good school, but they also want a nice home. If they can send their kids to public school, they can afford to spend more on their homes. Okay, so there's just upward pressure, period, when you have good schools. People move there for that, which drives prices up because it has higher desirability. So there'll always be a correlation between that. Now, there are a few very, very small pockets just south of Sunset in Brentwood that do have access to all of the same schools that north of Sunset does. I didn't know that until I was looking for a family who needed the Pally High School, which is what Brentwood north of Sunset feeds to. Now, once you go up into Brentwood, however, north of Sunset, property value begins to increase, and then the higher you go up, decrease. And why is that?
It'd be the roads.
Accessibility, yes. How accessible are the things that you want to do? That feeds back to location though, right? You can be in a nice area, but if it's 15 minutes drive to the nearest main highway to get where you need to go through super narrow, scary canyon roads, there are fewer people who are willing to deal with that every day, right? Okay, so now that we've talked about location and schools, let's talk about the other factors in desirability of property. I'm going to take screen share off for a minute.
How often do they rate the schools?
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, so what else goes into evaluating property? Specs, square footage of the property, bedroom, bathroom count, square footage of the lot. But remember, when we get into those massive lots, it's very difficult because really the only part of it that has value, well, significant value, is the buildable usable part. So like I said, the part that is not buildable usable also gives offset from the neighbors and allows for more privacy. So it does have some value, just not the same type of value as flat buildable land does. Okay. Condition, property condition. And not only that, there are tiers of condition. This is why staging works so well. This is why all of my gay clients' homes have like 25 offers. Because it's gorgeous, okay? Because it's clean and it's gorgeous. And it can be exactly the same house as next door. But what my clients have done as far as furnishing it and making it charming and appeal emotionally to the buyers, it does drastically affect how a buyer feels, which is going to lend to desirability, right? I want to talk about Zillow's estimates and Redfin estimates and online evaluations now, really quick. The one reason why they have zero value is because they're an algorithm based on specs, just the numbers. And so you can have two homes that were built by the same developer, not same. Oh. This vacation I'm on. The same developer that are exactly the same size, exactly the same layout, exactly the same everything, completely exact in specs. Well, one, they're both built in 1960. One has been well maintained, but it's the same little old lady who bought it, and it is in exactly the same original condition. She has not updated anything other than what was broken. Your next door neighbor could have traded hands, the next door neighbor house could have traded hands a couple of times, and someone like me who can't afford what she wants but can't live in anything that's not really pretty probably came in and slowly bled herself dry, making that house very nice. Are they worth the same thing?
No.
But Zillow thinks they are worth exactly the same thing unless it has some reported property sales on that neighboring house. Let's say they were both owned the entire time by the same people. And this one was remodeled, but it hasn't been sold since it was remodeled. So they just remodeled the entire thing to sell it. Zillow thinks these homes are worth exactly the same. And that is why they will never be accurate, okay? Explain to your clients, it is all based on algorithms, all on numbers. Not only that, they're built on the assessor's numbers, which is often inaccurate, even if bedroom, bathroom changes or square footage additions or changes like that are permitted. They don't always update correctly, okay? So completely inaccurate. So sorry, seller that thinks their $2 million house is worth $4 because, you know, Zillow said so. It probably means that your neighbors have amazing houses and there's been a bunch of complete remodels or new construction on the block. Let's see, what else makes a house, what else affects value in a home? Well, something that makes it quirky or difficult to use for some reason. So I'll give you an example. Was assistant to this agent and he had this place that was beautiful and massive up in the hills, but stairs. That was one of the things. It wasn't stairs. They had a really steep driveway and they didn't have direct access from the garage to the house. So as a woman in high heels, or if I was a woman with children, or a woman with 2 Pomeranians and 2 bags I've got to carry all the time, and sometimes in heels, I'm sorry, I am not buying that house. I am not renting that house because it's just not, it's not possible for me to safely get in and out of there. I don't want to carry groceries there. I don't want to do that. But yes, also a bunch of stairs, like a bunch of multiple levels, although that's a trade-off with you having homes. Yes.
What if it's new construction surrounding apartment buildings from?
We'll talk about external economic appreciation later. So again, let's hold our questions unless they're directly related to what I'm talking about, because
I thought
very
it's
likely,
related, sorry.
because we'll very likely talk about it. So sorry, I'm off. Oh, also the owner had the last couple of owners had actually been celebrities, but they were single men. So they had originally 2 bedrooms, even though they had like 2,700 square feet in the house, but they had made one into an open loft. Most people buying a house that size in that price range, they're looking for probably 3 bedrooms, bare minimum 2, but that loft would have needed to be enclosed. And I don't believe it had its own bathroom attached to it. I think they changed it into something like I don't know if it was a screening room. I think they changed it into what's called the room where you develop a dark room for developing photography. Yeah, so, right, so they modified it so heavily that it suited their needs, but it did not suit the general public's, which is what is indicative of value, right? What about, I just leased a house for my a set of gay clients, gorgeous house. They changed the 3rd bedroom, they put direct access to their garage to it. Well, I told them, you know, when we sell, I want you to close that door back up because I want this to be a 3rd bedroom. Most people looking for a 3-bedroom house are not a gay couple, and it's likely that a lot of your potential buyers would have children, particularly because your house is located in a fantastic school district. Okay, so things like that. Now we're going to talk about external economic factors. External, what is it called? External appreciation, external depreciation. So things that aren't actually the property, the subject property, but still affect value. Okay, so we talked about proximity to major streets and highways, but also, yeah, is it next to multifamily? Is it next to a commercial building? Is there a big, condo complex on the back side of it, right? Is there a school across the street that causes a lot of noise and a bunch of traffic, right? A great school can be something you want, but if it is affecting your accessibility, it can also be a negative. Is parking really rough in the entire neighborhood? How about this? There's a big power pole on the perimeter of the property. Yeah, right? What about a view? A view would not be considered external. However, we're not talking about a real view now. We're talking about you just see ugly like tops of your like neighbors' houses and other walls and fences. You see power lines, you see something ugly from the views in the windows, from the external places, right? That doesn't necessarily have downward appreciation on the property, but it makes it less desirable. And obviously, if it's less desirable, fewer buyers, which means a harder time selling, which does generally mean downward pressure on the price. Okay. Now, on the flip side, a real view can drastically increase property value, right? Maybe even double it in some instances. Can anyone else think of external factors that would affect value in an upward or downward way? Airport noise, yeah. What was the other
Living
thing?
near the ocean.
Living near the ocean. I tie that into location, but yes, that would make it.
Living near a gas station.
Maybe. I don't think most people think about a gas station environmentally that way. But if they're living near a gas station, it probably means they're living near a busy street.
Right.
Would be the bigger concern.
Oh, there's my name.
Yeah.
I sure.
Anything else, guys?
Just
Sports.
Like, there's like a stadium or like a.
Yeah,
shopping
a
mall.
stadium or shopping mall, anything that's going to cause drastic traffic backup. Yeah.
Fire station.
Fire station. Yeah, I live pretty close to Cedar Sinai. There are definitely some nights that ambulances wake me up, but it's the closest I can afford to the office. So it's a trade-off. I just wear earplugs when I go to sleep now. No, I don't. It's not that bad. It's not often. They usually turn it off. They've had enough complaints from the people who pay a lot of money to live in that area to where they turn off their siren when they get close to the hospital.
I just have a client and they're looking for the house 4 million and they kind of like the house in a Miracle Mile, but surrounding all this apartment building and houses not good quality, and I can see it through the Zillow. I mean, like roughly, right? 1.2.
No, Zillow
1.5.
does not count.
But it's, okay.
Yeah.
Should I?
I want you to take Zillow off your radar. I want every time anyone says Zillow, I'm going to say that's absolute garbage and explain why. Period. Zillow is fucking garbage.
Okay.
Okay, so if you want to look at the surrounding neighborhood on the MLS and look at sales prices, then I'll listen. Got it?
Like visual inspection saying that the neighborhood way lower than this built new.
Yeah,
construction.
so that is the perfect example of external depreciation. It's called big fish, small pond syndrome. Most people generally believe you don't want to have the nicest, most expensive home in a surrounding neighborhood that's not as nice. Miracle Mile, I'm not too worried about it. There's that house in an area that costs more, that's nicer, it's gonna cost $1 million to $2 million more.
Mhm.
So it's a trade-off. Did they want the house or the neighborhood? They're not gonna get both in that price range.
Yeah, they want to leave. It's not like they buying to sell or something like invest. Like
Yeah,
they-
they want to live in Miracle Mile, it's considered a nice area.
Yeah, it's fine, right? I shouldn't point that, hey guys, actually.
No, Miracle Mile is considered a nice area. I would be personally offended because until the last year and a half, that's where I live. There are different parts of it that are considered like, just like Beverly Hills, like Museum Square, right? Which is Wilshire to Olympic would be considered the nicest part of Miracle Mile because it's a lot of single families. And then Olympic to Pico, the second nicest, and then Pico to Venice, the third nicest. South of Venice, some of that I think is still Miracle Mile. That's developing and that's still like a street by street basis, but I encourage those buys because those property values are skyrocketing because things are getting remodeled, rebuilt and sold there. So there's always two ways to look at it, right? Always two ways to look at it. Also, the single families between Pico and Olympic closer to Fairfax, the northwestern tip of Fair Village, they're considered really nice. There's a lot of walking streets there. It really just depends. But like I said, all of those areas, they're still massively appreciating, right? So a client can get their foot in the door for a lower cost there, and they might see a higher return than if they purchase somewhere else. Might. Let's see. So yeah, that big fish, small pond syndrome. There's two ways of looking at it. Like I said, what about being the crummiest house in the nicest neighborhood? That's probably your best value buy, but does your buyer want to live in the crummiest house? Does your seller think that their crummy house is worth the sales prices that they've seen along their street? These are battles that we have to very, very gently take under, right? I can't be like, your house is shit compared to all of the $4 million sales. It's only worth $3 million because you have not done anything to it, let alone dust. I don't like sitting here. No, I've only been in a couple that are that bad. I'm like, oh, it's all about managing expectations. And so with CMA, I'm telling you why something might be considered one way or another, so that you can look at comps and you can decide what is actually relevant, so that you're not including irrelevant search results. When you pull together a comparative market analysis report, I strongly encourage you, make sure you have all of the photos, make sure you have an electronic version of your report on something that's, detachable, really easy to use, notepad, something, because when my crazy client thinks their house is worth, as much as the other homes on the street that are significantly nicer condition, I like to zoom. I like to zoom in on the photos and ask them, well, how do you think that the condition of your property compares to this one? This one's clearly been completely remodeled to, all of the finishes that are really popular now, this, that, easily this took $500,000. We can definitely get your house to a value like this one, but are you willing to put in that kind of cash to do the remodel work, right? I'm doing it more gently than that, but you get my gist, right? All right, so.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Thinking about Zillow. Sorry to insult the MLS. Many times I do not see properties on the MLS, which is insane. I don't know. I know the moment you upload them to MLS, it's supposed to be all over. They're not. I know if I see something sell for rent, I go on MLS right away. I
For
don't
rent, there's
see
a
it.
lot of stuff on Zillow that's never on months.
So you're saying it's the more.
Yeah.
sale
It's
than
more
the lease.
rentals.
The rentals, I'll see other places than rentals.
Yes,
Could
because
be-
not
could
everyone
be-
uses an agent for a rental. In fact, more often than not, a landlord does not use an agent for a rental.
I'll see an agent on like a fair, I won't say.
Huh?
Sometimes I see, yeah, with agents, listing with agents, rentals, it won't be an rental.
That agent may be acting as in the capacity of a manager versus an agent. Don't know.
Okay.
Offers that and so on.
And I don't know if the MLS has the same cooperation policies about marketing leases and pockets and things like that.
Mhm.
For a lease as they do for a sale, so I could see that happening. Let's see, what else? Okay, so let's talk about single family versus condo. If I have a condo, I have not only the condition of the unit, the specs of the unit to consider, I have the building. No.
Full with the.
I have the amenities of the building and the condition of the building to consider, right? Right, so is a property, that has a great unit located in a building that has zero amenities where things are clearly falling apart. The paint has marks all over it in the common areas. You can see a leak from a pipe in the communal parking garage. Where you can see the carpets all stained. Like in the conference room here. Is that gonna be worth as much as something that is beautiful where you see maintenance people working and it sparkles? No. That has tennis courts and pools? No. Likely they're gonna be higher HOA dues there, but let's say 2 buildings, units are very similar. They have no amenities, but one is in tip-top condition in the common areas and one is not. The one that is in tip-top condition is gonna sell faster than the one that's not. So I really, really don't like to take comps outside of an HOA building. If it's not a large building, I'm gonna have difficulty with that. But even if I can find sales comps from 2 or 3 years ago in the same building, I would like to adjust for general market value increase in that type of property. Like a condo versus a single family, they both have different appreciation rates, right? So if the average property value increase in Studio City condos, from 2022 to 23 was 7%, I would rather take, and the year before that was 10%. I would rather add 17% to a 2-year-old comp in the same building than I would like to go outside of the building, because then I have to do a CMA on the unit and the building. And unless I've been into both of those buildings, it's really tough. Most of the time I have not. Single family comps are generally harder than condos, but if you don't find comps in the same building, it is very hard. It's very hard. And the less accurate I can be in how well I think comps compare, the bigger price range I have to give. What price range do you think a buyer always settles on, and which does the seller settle on? Buyer looks at the low end, seller's always gonna look at the high end, right?
What is regular price range, like how many?
There's no regular price range. It would be relative to property value, but honestly, my price range depends on what I'm seeing in my actual comps that I'm pulling, right? So if I have 9 fantastic comps and the price range between them is only 50,000, I'm gonna do 50,000. Right, but if the price range between them is 150, I'm going to do 150. Although as you increase in property value, the higher the property value, generally the harder it is to comp out. Because these properties are very individual, right? And you're gonna see my price range increase get larger and larger. Obviously, there's some place where I have to stop, where it does not make sense for my price range gap to get any bigger, right? If I'm giving a seller a price range between 3.5 and 4, that's a massive price difference. I should be able to nail it within 20% tops. 20% is still massive, right? Because if you overprice by more than 10%, you are likely hurting your seller very badly. Yes.
Hopefully not off topic, but my client looking for buying condo in Beverly Hills, and now he's trying to compare using the different building, but the land for 48 years lease agreement. And this,
Leased land,
yes, this.
yeah, he can't compare a leased land.
I'm also
condo
saying
with
that it's uncomparable,
Yeah, it's not comparable.
but what the risk with this land?
That's an off-topic question. You'll have to ask me after class. But I talk about land leases all the time, particularly in,
I have a question
yeah, hold on.
on Zoom.
Not finished answering. I talk about land leases in both contract classes, RPA and listing agreement class. So if you wanna.
Of course
skim
I
over
will.
one.
I'm only.
So if you look at my residential purchase agreement class or my listing contract class, you'll see it. You'll get the answer to that. I'm sorry, what was the question?
But my question is, if you have two properties that is on the same street and the only difference is the condition, so how are you gonna come up with the counts? So you have to calculate the cost of the remodel and deduct that from the subject property?
No, I don't, because I'm not a contractor. And how much a remodel costs is directly correlated to what type of finishes somebody wants in their home. No, I don't. I generally use comps of similar condition only if I can, right? So if I'm looking at a street and I have a comp of the same specs on that street, will I include it in my CMA? I will, but it's not going to weigh as heavily in my analysis of the property evaluation. It's just not going to. I would rather look at a home 3 blocks away that is similar spec, that is similar condition.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm gonna screen share again, and I'm gonna go back to the MLS. And now I am going to pull up a property. What is that address? And I am going to, this is how, by the way, I start off pulling comps for every property. I come up here to the address and I type in my subject property address. Okay, it's going to bring me to that address and I can zoom in. And the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to decide, do I have any geographical barriers that I want to definitely stay within and I cannot go outside of? Well, first and foremost, I want to make sure I stay within the MLS area. So in this instance, I'm within the West LA area, right? I think this one is Rancho Park. Yeah, Cheviot Rancho Park is definitely worth more money than West LA, right? Now, right away, I can see I have massive geographical barriers to work with. And this was actually my listing. And I represented the buyers on it as well. And this was a tough sale for me. It was really tough because my sellers wanted more than the property was worth. And I had super close proximity, about a half a block in from the 10 freeway. But I also had massive geographic barrier here on Westwood Boulevard. This is the Expo line and Exposition Boulevard. So I have the train here. So I'm not going north of that. And then I have Sepulveda Boulevard here. So first and foremost, I never want to see any agent ever use the tool where they use a radius or like this from a property address. Because does that go into other MLS areas? Does that violate all my geographic borders? Yes, if you are using this method to look at comps, you are sorely wrong. Okay. Okay, let's see. Oh, it's really sad. Sorry guys, at home I had to put on glasses. All right, so What tool do I always use when I'm pulling comps? I use this tool under draw. It's a polygon tool. It looks like a house. And I'm going to draw my geographic barriers. This is a very small section, right? So it was very hard for me to comp out. Not only that, homes like in this area are going to be worth less than homes here because of their proximity to the freeway. Okay, so I did use some comps from over here, but I gave a lot more weight to the comps closer to the freeway because my subject property was half a block from the freeway. So if I'm using things 2 blocks from the freeway, obviously they're going to be more desirable than my subject property I'm trying to give value to. Yes.
Does the train affect any value also?
I don't think so, not really, because there aren't any stops super close to there. And I didn't see like transient traffic through there for it. Yeah, I don't think it really affected value. No, but I do know that the neighborhood composition starts to look a lot different over here as well as over here. And I also know like the neighborhood composition between Sepulveda and the 405 is probably the crummiest single family neighborhood on the west in West LA that I've seen. Yeah. Obviously you have to be super careful when you talk to your clients. You can't use adjectives like crummy. You can't say things like transient, right? You have to be super careful. You need to find a way to speak your client's language and get a message through to them without violating federal fair housing law, without, not being professional. Pretend like I'm with my clients right now for a minute and talk about this. Well, the proximity to the freeway obviously makes things less desirable just due to potential pollution as well as sound. And the homes, the other side of Westwood Boulevard, they're just over, overall Hancock Park, Rancho Park, they're higher value areas, primarily single family residents, a lot of them very high-end homes. Whereas we have the Expo line to the north. And I think that the neighborhood on the other side of that is just differently composed, but I don't think that there's much foot traffic coming in and out of the Expo line in this area. So I don't think we need to worry about that. And to the east, I'm not pulling comps, west of Sepulveda, just because I think that's a much different neighborhood between 405 and Sepulveda, right? Yay! But I don't have much of that in me. That's why you get directly me. But I don't want you to model yourself after me at all when you're talking to clients, right? We just had 2 very different conversations saying exactly the same thing. And that is so important. All right. Oh, I'm not screen sharing at home with you, am I? Am I? Okay.
Yes, you are.
All right, so the second thing I never want to see any of you do is use any comps other than what is sold in a CMA. Does that mean that property that's currently listed has no value? No, it doesn't. It absolutely has value. I just pull those as our potential competition or our potential options if I'm pulling a CMA for a buyer, right? Because you pull a CMA for a buyer just as often as you do for a seller, every time. I just pulled those MLS listings separately, okay? So I like to go back if I have enough comps the last 6 months. If I do not, I'm very okay with going back a year, particularly in this market. Property value has not increased or decreased much in the last year. So whatever they're telling you in the news, property value is going down, not in our neck of the woods, not at all. Okay, so I am pretty comfortable at this point using 1 year. 2 years ago, I was not comfortable using comps that were more than 3 months old. Why is that? The market was going crazy. Appreciation was going nuts. Yeah. If I pull comps for a buyer, they're like, oh, it's not worth it. I'm like, it's going to sell 100,000 over asking. At least, guaranteed, no matter what my comps say, that's because my comps are 30 days old and they cannot keep up. Or more. All right, so before I put any specs in for my subject property, I can see that there have been 17 sales within the last year. Can you see a trend in pricing from the areas close to the freeway versus areas further away?
Yes.
What's that trend? What can you see just by looking at this?
Higher prices as you.
Get further away from the freeway. Yeah, higher prices. This is like everything that you look at. I want you to look at it and analyze the information there. So this is the science part of it still. Okay. Once we start deciding what's relevant, right? I sold my property for 1.3 a few years ago. It's probably worth about 1.5, 1.6 now. Unless there's been a bunch of remodels. So I'm gonna tell you, like right now, like I wouldn't even consider anything that's 3, 4, right? Unless there's been significant remodel or square footage, but that's because I know this property. It's really difficult when you go for a listing appointment and you don't know the condition of the property. So when you're going in for a listing appointment, sight unseen, I want you to have a massive range in mind. And we're gonna talk about in listing presentation class, what goes on in a listing presentation. You're gonna buy a lot of time to get a lot of time looking at the property and talking to the owner. Number one, so you know what's important to the owner and you know their language. Okay, they're gonna tell you everything you know if you ask enough questions and you pay enough attention. And number two is to go through that house and determine, is this house worth 1.5 or is this house worth 2 or is it something in between, right? I usually don't have that big of a range in my mind. I'm usually like on the low end, I'm at 1.4 and the high end, I'm at 1.6. But I have gone in and been like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. This is worth 1.2 and nothing more. Okay. So when I go in for a listing appointment, I do not have numbers in my CMA. When I send my CMA to my buyers, I have seen the subject property. I definitely have a range every single time there. Now, if I've been in the seller's house before and I know it, I should have numbers in my CMA.
You want to go for that?
I'm getting there, honey.
Sorry.
It's okay. So now that I looked at this and I determined my general criteria, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say, nah, I'm not gonna go with anything that's sold over 2, because there's no way this property is worth over 2. I'm not always using this method. I'm using it because this is so specific with that freeway. But most of the time you're not entering a max sales price in here, okay? Unless you know, like you're working in the hills and you are working with an amazing property or a really crummy one where I'm like, no, I don't want to even clutter my results with stuff over 10 million because I know my subject property is worth nothing more than that. Or no, I'm working with a mega house. I'm not looking at anything under 12, 15 million, whatever. And I'm cutting that out. So it's easier for me to focus on what I need to focus on, right? So that's the only time I'm going to use this. But it is a tool I'd like to use in this instance because there's no way a house within 1 block of the freeway here in this area is going to be worth over 10 million. Maybe next year, maybe the year after, but not this year. But I know that by looking at the specs and knowing this neighborhood really well. If you don't know the neighborhood really well, you probably don't want to go here, or maybe you go like higher, like the 2.5 range. But there's not enough comps here for me to actually be that concerned about it. So I'm going to take that out. If I had not drawn geographic barriers within my MLS area and I wanted to add an MLS area on top of it so that I'm not going outside of it, I could put that in here, right? Like if I wasn't, like if I just drew geographic barriers and I had not had the layers on with the MLS area, let's say I was in Brentwood, I easily, if I was looking at the Brentwood flats, I easily could have included part of West LA in there. Is West LA going to be worth the same as Brentwood? No. No, there's prestige with the name Brentwood, right? Same thing with Beverly Hills. So I live in West Hollywood technically, and directly across the street is Beverly Hills. That's why I can afford my place. I don't have kids that I need to send to schools. I don't need to be in Beverly Hills. I just want to be really close to the office because I come and go a lot. It's funny, people are like, is it safe for you in West Hollywood? You're so small. Do you go out by yourself at night? And I'm like, yes, ma'am. I do walk around with my 2 little dogs late at night. sometimes drunk. Oftentimes drunk. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I live at the southwest end of West Hollywood, right? It has a different vibe, a different walkability, different types of businesses. Directly across the street on many sides of where I'm located is Beverly Hills. So West Hollywood southwest versus West Hollywood northeast, we don't have the same vibe going on, right? We just don't. So you have to talk to your clients about what they're looking for and what they want as well. Don't, just because it's within the same MLS geographic area, do not give it the same vibe, do not give it the same value or weight. You need to know these areas very well. So if you don't, you need to drive them. You need to talk to someone who really, really does a lot of business in that area. You need to know the differences and why something might be worth more if it's on one side of that area versus another. And again, in LA, major streets are big geographic barriers. As you get to Sunset, you get a lot of foot traffic that's not always considered, foot traffic that we feel comfortable around, right? Things like that. So I think I got off topic here. I think I got distracted here. Oh yeah, so even within the same MLS area, let's say this was Beverly Hills and this was West Hollywood. Is this necessarily going to be worth the same as this? No, but it is a case-by-case basis. So know it, like driving the area and knowing it and get a feel for it, drive that neighborhood and make that decision, okay? Also, even if you entered criteria, so what's next? Bedroom, bathroom count, square footage, followed by lot size in order of importance is going to be next, right? So major difference between a 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom. When you're in condos, 1-bedroom, you'll find sometimes those are very difficult sales because you have a limited buyer pool. Most people who can buy in Los Angeles, generally 2 people, but even if it's a single person, they want that spare bedroom for office or guests. 1-bedrooms are particularly difficult to sell. Okay. So 2 to 3-bedroom, massive difference. 3 to 4 bedrooms, still an important difference. Once you get into 5-bedroom and above, it doesn't affect value as much. So would I be willing to consider a house of the same square footage with same lot size, similar condition, and compare a 5-bedroom to a 6-bedroom or a 6-bedroom to a 7-bedroom and say it has pretty much the same value? Yeah, I would be much more willing to do that once we get into a higher bedroom count. Same thing with bathrooms. I think once I get above 3 bathrooms, I'm okay with looking at a 3 and 4 bathroom. Once I get into the 5-bathroom range, 5 or 6, not a big difference. Even 5 or 7, not a big difference, right? As long as there's enough bathrooms,
Yeah.
cool. Massive difference between 1 and 2 or 2 and 3. Maybe still like 4, but once you get into 5 and up, it doesn't hold as much value. So feel free to compare that, 5-bedroom with the 6-bedroom that has 6 baths, 6 baths with the 5-bedroom and 4 baths with the 6-bedroom. Feel free to do that all day long, okay? Also, if it has the same square footage, I can't find a good comp, I'd be much more willing to compare a 3-bedroom with a 4-bedroom than a 3-bedroom with a 3-bedroom that has way different square footage and way different. Why is that? Is because I can also use the sales price per square foot method, which is my second option. Direct comparison model between very similar specs and very similar condition is my #1 method I want to use when I'm comparing property value. Number 2 is I can't find the same specs, but I can find very, very similar condition, same lot size, hopefully similar square footage, but even if it's not exactly the same square footage, condition, location, lot size, I'm going to look at that and I'm going to use the sales price per square foot method. And I'm going to take something of very similar condition and I'm going to apply that price per square foot to my square footage. Remember, not my first option, but it is very, very often used. In fact, I'd say half of the time I have to resort to this method to price out property. Why is that? Because Los Angeles is such a high value area that homes go through a lot of remodel. We cannot look at year built. Year built only changes on a property if it's completely new construction, which a lot of developers don't want to do because it means that they have to set back the perimeter of the house a certain square footage from the edge of the property, which means they can have less square footage. For them, remodeled square footage and more square footage means more money than new construction. Okay. So they can take it down to one wall, the studs in one wall, and it'll be just like new construction, but that year built's gonna remain the same. So I never want to see year built used in comps at all, ever. It means zero, and it means you're gonna miss very important information. You're gonna miss a ton of property that does, that are relative comps to your subject property possibly. Okay, and then lot size, again, when you get into those massive hill properties, the lot size matters less and less, okay? So what I'm looking at a lot more often is photos. I'm looking at the square footage of the home in addition to, does it have a yard? Like how much outdoor usable recreational space does it have? And so I'm not gonna compare a house that has zero outdoor space with a hills property that has a reasonable amount. And that is more looking at the photographs. So you're pulling these comps. Let's say I'm in my perfect world here, right? I don't think things like pools or anything like that has a significant effect on value. Okay, I do think when it gets into high end, something like a great view house with a great backyard that doesn't have a pool, I do think it sort of makes it less desirable. So, you know, in something that is like an entertainment house that doesn't have that key piece of entertainment, I might say to my clients, you know, if it had a pool, if it had this, that, it'd probably be worth 100 to 150,000 more, but we don't have those things. We have these few problems, right? Those things are subjective. They don't have actual value. So I'm just going to exercise my best judgment as an agent. This is why if you're a new agent, you need to look at MLS sales prices, what happens, stays on market. You need to go to those brokers open so you see them yourself and keep track of them in the MLS when they sell, and you study that trend. Okay, I know it's a lot, but if you don't know about the market, you're going to be doing a ton of work every time you have an opportunity and you need to give an evaluation of price or value. So let's say it's a perfect world. These are all fantastic comps, okay, which is never the case. Oh, and by the way, guys, how many comps do you need for a CMA? You don't get to control how many comps are good. So I don't ever want to see more than about 10 to 12, because there's no world in which there's more than 10 to 12 good comps, right? But I would rather have one good comp than 3 comps, okay? You really only need one great comp, but I really want to see like a few homes. I do want to show sellers and buyers high end and low end. Things that are comparable in spec, maybe they're not perfect, right? Or they're comparable in condition, but not perfect in spec, right? That is going to give me my high and low range. I want probably 4 at a minimum, but I'm not forcing a round or square peg into a round hole. I'm not doing it. So if I only have one, I only use one. If I have all garbage, I look at it for a long time and my range is a little bit bigger, but I'm going to share at least 3 or 4 properties with my clients. Every once in a while, I'll have a property that comes across my desk that I cannot find a comp for in the world. I just can't. So at that point, then I have to look at property in a different way. And it's really a guessing game. How much do I think it would take to improve this property to this condition, or how much more is my property worth because the only comp I have is such different condition, or this is a horse property and it has key access in Malibu. Oh, my world. I don't know how to comp that out, right? That's difficult. It's just gonna be a higher range. It's just gonna be a higher range. And if you're talking to a seller, don't know, there's no direct comp. And I say that all the time. There is no direct comp for your property. I think these are relevant. These are what I think are relevant. This is what's the same. This is what's different. This is the high end of the range. I think it's in, and this is the low range. It's simply about explaining your thought process in relation to your numbers. So these are all perfect comps. Ha, 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 ha. Never going to happen. I'm going to look at every single MLS agent full detail. I'm going to read the MLS description and entry. Why? Well, if my subject property does not have an ADU, but this property does, ADU, even if it's the same total square footage, probably adds a little bit more value than my subject property. So I'm gonna, look at differences like that. Unpermitted problematic stuff, I'm gonna look at differences like that. Sometimes it's a probate or trust sale that's a cash buyer only. That's gonna put downward pressure on the sales price because there are fewer cash buyers. Okay, so I'm gonna look at, I need to read the MLS description for information like that. Also, you will have outliers sometimes. Property that just sold really high or really low. I want you to pick up the phone and call the listing agent and the buyer's agent because sometimes one's gonna lie to you. Especially when you get into high end. That listing agent's always gonna lie. They're not gonna tell you about the $100,000 in commission credit they gave to make the deal close because there was a massive repair that needed work done and the seller was too stubborn to give the credit. But both of us worked so long and so hard, fuck that, you can have 50 grand as long as I walk away with my 100, right? That stuff happens all the time, particularly in high end. But you need to get that information. Even if you have great comps that don't have any information like that, that have normal prices, that don't look like outliers, you want to pick up the phone anyways, all right? Also, I want you to be aware of really weird variations that go street by street basis. The agents who have sold in that area now, and you're only gonna know really if you talk to someone or if you go on Caravan and you know these differences. Like Brentwood, Kenter Canyon, the east side of Kenter, all the hills are uphill, or all the lots are uphill. They have very little outdoor space. I've only seen one with a pool ever, I know, because it was my listing. The west side of the street, which I've never been fortunate enough to have a listing on, just the east side, they're all flat 10,000 square foot lots. So if you talk to a seller on Kenter Canyon, he's gonna wonder why his property on the east side of Kenter Canyon is worth $3 million less than his neighbor directly across the street. And that is because their home, their lot is completely usable. It's a strong family neighborhood, although that's for housing discrimination, right? But we know that most people who buy Brentwood north of Sunset, like Kenter Canyon, they're buying for that school system, right? So who is our average buyer? Who is most of our buyer pool made of? It is made of people with children who want to send their kids to the public school. So there are differences even across the street. There are things that you're never going to know unless you ask, just like there are going to be factors that affect all of these sales that you won't know unless you talk to the agent. So even if you have a fantastic comp that doesn't say anything strange in the remarks or agent remarks, you should pick up the phone if you have the time to make sure that you are doing the best evaluation for your clients ever. I'll tell you why. There was, in one of these homes I was selling on the east side of Kenter Canyon, there was a home on the west side on the same block that sold particularly low. And they're like, this is worth this. And it was an agent whose clients were interested in my listing. Then your home is not worth this. And I said, well, why don't you call the listing agent on that one? They happen to work at my brokerage, and I know that there was a $250,000 credit because the house was crazy, like mold ridden and had major foundation issues, right? Nobody knows that except for someone who picks up the phone and asks, or asks that listing agent. So even when you have a listing, you want to ask your competition what's going on. You want to keep track of those sales. You need to know things like that, because if I hadn't been able to say that to that buyer, and guess what? That agent's buyer ended up with the property. I might not have got that agent and their buyer up to the price that I needed them to be at to sell that property. So it's really important, not just for CMA, but for any time you have something, you need to have a personal conversation with these agents so that you know what's going on in the neighborhood and the things that we don't see on public records, that we don't see on the MLS. All right. Last but not least, I'm only going to show you how to do this. I am not going to actually go through it with you because it's super user friendly. Once I've decided which properties I actually think are relevant and I want to use in my CMA. All of us have free access to and should use Cloud CMA plugins. You click on it after you selected which properties over here on the left-hand side you'd like to include in your CMA, and you hit Create CMA. And it has the most user-friendly comparative market analysis report I've ever seen. Not only that, you should go into Cloud CMA, okay? Just Google Cloud CMA, get yourself logged in. You can put your phone number, you can put your email. You should have that template stuff personalized to you set up. You should look at the template for reports. It has color schemes, but also it has pages that you can include and exclude. It's really simple stuff. I'm gonna stop share now. It's really simple stuff. That page, you put in your subject property information. It already has the MLS information from all the properties, including photos that you selected. It will automatically pull it into your report. And then it asks you if you want to edit your report at all. And it's literally like drag and pull. You know, I want this, I don't want this, but it also has like a minus and a plus. You can click it. You can also take like there's things you can have in one column. There's things you can add to your or that are in your report. So you can drag them back and forth. You can minus them. You can drag that. You can add them. But you can also change the order of what's in your report and how it shows up. One of those things is suggested sales price. Like I said, if you have not seen that property on the inside, that should never be in there. If you have seen it all day long, put that in there. If it's buyer, you can put that in there if you like. Honestly, if it's a buyer I've worked with before or we're looking at a lot of property, I'm not always pulling an actual formal CMA for them. I'll simply send them the client full detail MLS listings, and I'll just write up what I have to say about it because I've been taking notes on everything I'm looking at. They don't need the report. I think for a buyer, when we're working in real time like that, it can actually be time consuming and overwhelming for them instead of just sending them the direct comp and reviewing it with them. Because most of the time that's not a formal presentation, that's an email. You might have a phone conversation with your buyer about it prior to making an offer. Make sense? Yeah, does anyone have any questions? There are going to be things I haven't covered in this class come up all the time. There is no way for me to discuss everything. But look at it again, call on it, show it to different agents, ask for help. Okay, I still ask for help with comps all the time because I need that help. Doesn't matter how well I know a neighborhood, you know, I'll ask someone like, you know, did you go into, like, I'll see a property that I want to include on my CMA. I'll be like, hey, did you go into such and such property? My buyers want to make an offer on this one across the street. Have you been in that one also? What do you think the differences were? Because I didn't go into that other one that sold. I've been in this one, obviously, but not that one. Right? So I'll ask things like that. Questions? Yeah. All right. Yeah.
I was going to say real quick, Brittany just told me to say before we left, because she didn't want to interrupt the class, please make sure you sign in if you want the credit for tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you. All
Of course.
right. No questions then?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Kristen.
Welcome. Have a great day.
I just have a note, I might have somebody